With that, I'd like to introduce Sean Loscalzo. Sean's the president of Superior Towing Company in Florida. But very importantly, or as important, is the fact that he's a former member of the United States Marine Corps and founder of Superior Towing in Florida. He has held leadership roles in the Professional Wreckers Operators of Florida and is a co-founder of the Sunshine State Towing Association. He currently serves as the vice president of Guardian Fleet Services. He has received various honors for significant contributions to the towing industry and community. So with that, I turn it over to Sean.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody's excited about towing. I know that some people love it, and it's something that I've done my whole career. So we're going to talk about advanced, safe, quick clearance for commercial vehicles, and we have a new piece of technology that we've introduced into our fleet. And Grady Carrick had asked me to discuss it because it has really done some significant changes for us with quicker clearance. Next slide. Jim has already said all this, so we can go to the next slide. Quick clearance using dollies. This is new technology for us in the towing industry. And one of the most difficult things that we face as towers is when we're called out to a fully loaded tractor trailer or a loaded straight truck, and there's something wrong with the rears. Most of the time you can't tow a trailer from the rear unless you have specific equipment. So there's a new set of dollies that has just hit the market, and this is a picture of them. Next slide. So the old way we dollied a trailer in the past is towers would kind of make their own set of dollies. We would use the tandems of a trailer and manufacture a fifth wheel onto it, or we would just cut a tractor off and cut the rears off the tractor where it would have the fifth wheel, and we weld an attachment on it, and it was a manufactured set of dollies that we utilized. The problems with doing it this way, like this is a picture of the front of a trailer with those dollies underneath it. Next slide. So again, this is the front of a trailer, and you can imagine how hard it would be to spin a 53-foot trailer around in a two or three lane limited access roadway. So we've done this before, and it is very time consuming. It's very dangerous. It would require you to exit the turnpike or 95 or any one of these interstate highways on an entrance ramp because you can't turn it around. And the only way this old set of dollies works is on a trailer. It doesn't work with a cement mixer or a loaded dump truck or garbage truck. You can go to the next slide. So these old set of dollies, this is, the pictures are worth 1,000 words. We would have to literally put the dollies under the front of the trailer, separate the units, separate the tractor from the trailer, throw the dollies under the front of the trailer, and then tow it from the rear. Now, if it's 53 foot, it's almost impossible to spin that around. So you have to go the opposite way in a limited access roadway situation. Next slide. So these new sets of dollies are really great, but how do you know you need them? Like, when do you know you need them? And sometimes you don't know you need dollies until you do an inspection of the casualty. And even then, sometimes it's really difficult to see if there's anything broken after an accident. And so if they're not brought out right away, then you need to deploy them. And sometimes it takes a little time to get them on scene, but when you do have them and you are prepared and you do have great information on the casualty, and you're able to deploy them, we can deploy them on a flatbed, or we can deploy them with a heavy-duty wrecker. So the cost of these, and they're fairly new to the market. I want to say within just 2 years they've hit the market, and our company had bought a set about a year ago, and we were shocked at how many times we do use them. So they are 10.5 feet wide. That picture here shows them on an 8.5 foot wide bed, so they hang off considerably. They are very, very big, and the cost. Oh, they are 2,000 pounds. They're about 2,000 pounds. So the cost for the 25,000 pound set that'll handle 25,000 pounds is around 15,000, and the cost for the heavier 44,000 pounds is around 20,000. You can go to the next slide. So I'm going to go through some incidents that we used them. This is US 27 southbound in Davie, Florida. This was a 2 tractor trailer crash. It wasn't fatal. Both leaving the roadway. The roadway was already closed because of the investigation. The loaded 53-foot box had broken some springs, and the axles came loose, and they were pinching against the frame. So there's a couple options. You know, we could have unloaded it because it was a bit dangerous. It was all of 42,000 pounds in the box, I think. The other option was to, use the old method with the dollies, separate the casualties, tow them separately, which was more labor intensive. Or we could have turned it around, obviously, if we had to tow with the old set of dollies. So it was definitely more labor intensive and more time on scene. Or to use the dollies. So next slide. We did use the dollies. And this is a picture, like if you showed up on scene and you were looking at it, I don't think that somebody who doesn't have really a trained eye would look at those tandems and say, oh, there's a problem there. But there is. They can see they're kind of off. And wrecker operators are very astute to this, because this is the first thing that they're trying to figure out. How are we going to get it back to the yard? So you can go to the next slide. So here's a picture of the trailer, and you can see that front rear axle has been damaged, and there was a slight impact to the side of the trailer, which broke the springs. So we slid the dollies underneath it, and then you can go to the next slide here. So here's both tractor trailers. I added this as a little levity to the conversation because Justin is a heavy-duty operator that works for us, and he's a very accomplished guy, and he had slipped these dollies underneath, and I want to say it took less than an hour after we set the dollies in place and get it back to the yard. So it was a successful, as quick as possible recovery. Next slide. So I know Saxton's on this conversation, and we do the towing for the Florida Turnpike, both for rapid incident scene clearance and for the specialty towing and recovery. This is an incident that happens quite frequently on the Florida Turnpike, and you can hit the next slide. And this is an example of the dollies and their rapid deployment and use. Here's a tractor and a trailer that the tandems caught fire, and we immediately knew that they were bad, and we deployed the tandems quickly, and it all came in one package. We only had to close one lane, and you can see that the rotating tow truck, was brought to my attention that there's some people that may not know what a rotator is, but in the industry we call a rotator, it's a rotating tow truck that the boom rotates around. They have this one specifically is a 60-ton. We lifted the back of the tractor. Next slide. Slid the dollies right up underneath it, and you know, again, only one lane was blocked. The tractor and trailer was back to the yard in probably less than an hour. You can go to the next slide. So I'm going to emphasize how wide they are. You know, 10.5 feet is pretty wide. So this is right up against the wall, and you can see that the entire unit is off the ground. Go to the next slide. And this picture says 1,000 things. You can see the width of the dollies, but you can see that everybody now has moved off onto the shoulder. And I think at this point, all lanes of traffic were open. We didn't have to spin this thing around. You can't put this casualty on a trailer because it's too high. That tractor is probably 11.5 feet high, 11.5 feet high. So putting it on a trailer, it would be over height. It'd be way too over height. And this thing was back to the yard in under an hour. Next slide. So this is a specialty 58-foot trailer that we bought about 5 years ago. It's about a $150,000 trailer. And this was prior to the dollies being available. Fully loaded trailer, caught fire, and was not able to roll. This happened before dollies, so we had to lift this whole entire trailer, 2 rotators, significant closure. I think we were 2.5 hours on this job between the fire and the cleanup. So it was labor intensive to get this trailer on top of this special, very low trailer. It's the lowest trailer you could buy. And we were still at 15 feet, which is traffic signal height. Obviously too high. But we ended up backing this up and going down that ramp and getting into the yard, kind of trying to avoid the traffic lights. Not a great, safe way to do things. But if we had dollies back then, and I use this as an example, if we had dollies back then, this would have been less labor intensive. It would have been a lot faster, and it would have been much safer. And safer for everybody, safer for the motoring public because we're not out there for an extended period of time, safe for our operators, safe for us to travel with this really difficult situation of a trailer that's been burned significantly and kind of compromised. You could see the holes in the side of the trailer that the fire department cut out, and they put the fire out. I believe, in my opinion, that this would have significantly lowered the clearance times on this incident. Next slide. Here's another example of the stuff that we deal with when these things catch fire, and it's usually brake fires that happen that compromise a trailer like this, and then it catches the load on fire. This obviously wasn't something that dollies could solve the problem and just hook up and go down the road. You can see the load has been drug out. Fire department was there for hours putting it out and kept catching fire. But before dollies, you know, for us, I would have had to like cut the landing gear off and had significant labor involved in trying to spin this around and get it on a trailer. We did have multiple trailers on site and dumpsters, but you can go to the next slide. And our operators being so creative, I don't believe it was intended this way, but this was a way that they utilized these dollies. They were easy to bring out. They dropped them underneath it. They lift the box up, and away they go. Next slide. Here's a picture of it on scene, chained to the dolly, and they hooked up the rotator. This is the entrance just before the turnpike on Sample Road, for those of you who know where that is. But it was very resourceful for our operators to utilize them in this way. They're definitely easier to deploy than the larger ones. And I think the next slide is a final example, really, of these trailers. This is used in a light duty aspect. Small car dollies, which have been around forever. They're only so big, and they can only handle so much weight. They're not accommodating for boat trailers, because boat trailers are a little bit wider than normal, because the boat sits in between where the wheels are. So some boat trailers are 9 feet wide. In this situation, typically we would have brought a trailer out and drag this up the trailer, and sometimes that's somewhat dangerous, because when you're dragging metal to metal up an incline that's on a shoulder that's kind of at an angle, or has a degree of an angle, you know, we've had issues where they try to slide off, and it just becomes more difficult, not as safe. This was easy, 1, 2, 3. We lifted the whole boat up, set it in the thing, and it's hooked up to a flatbed. Less equipment on scene. The flatbed was able to take the pickup. You can see it on the pickup. Next slide. And there it is, getting ready to roll away. So I can't talk enough about how many uses these do have. The one picture I don't have is it with a dump truck or a cement truck. We have used them on that, because even with a cement truck or a dump truck, there is no other alternative. You either have to unload it, and it becomes a real pain in the neck, and figure out a way to repair the axles before you can load it. These dollies you don't have to think about anything. You just pick it up, slide them underneath it, and off you go. Next slide. So Ohio just had some new regulation pass, I think, on towing and some of the commercial vehicles. How do you charge for this type of stuff on dollies? And in Florida, we have our own regulation that allows us to tow what we can charge on a commercial aspect. But the towing industry in all the way around is heavily regulated in some areas. And there's some areas that have no regulation, but in more of the metro areas, there's regulation. We just had all these conversations last year about junk fees and towers charging for, communications and lighting and different stuff, but it's all equipment. And so I want to let everybody know there should be an alternative or a way to build these out. And there may not be ways to build these out. And it's tough for a tower to spend $15,000 or $20,000 if there's no way that he can recoup his investment. So it's something that has to be looked at. And the purpose of TIM is to continually innovate in process of safe road clearance. We want to move as fast as we can. We don't want our people out there any longer than they have to be. So I think there's going to have to be some work based upon how you can charge for this added equipment. And we shouldn't be restricted for the investing in innovation to make the motoring public safer. We should not. It should be embraced by all government, because I think what we're trying to do here is create a safer environment, do road clearance quicker, and this new product does that. It does all the above. For me, it checks all the boxes, and our company now has, I want to say, 5 or 6 of them in different terminals that we own that that are all in use, and I would not have thought that we would use them as much as we are. So in conclusion, you can go to the next slide. Thank you for the participation. It's my honor to present this to you, and there is a link to the manufacturer that sells those dollies. Again, this isn't a commercial. It's just something that I thought that came to our industry that seemed so simple, and that we didn't have the opportunity to have these years ago. And I really wish we did, because it would have made things a little safer on the roadway. So thank you.